to the future of open data portals. I see there's people from Florence, from Frankfurt. I know Louise is in Southampton in the UK. Hello, Timo. So I see everyone's very active on chat already, which I encourage you to keep doing, including but not restricting yourself to questions to Lucy, who is our speaker this late afternoon. Lucy is the co-founder of the Open Data Institute's node ODI Devon. And she is also the founder of a tech startup called the Data Place, as well as an ODI associate and a data trainer. So she held various roles in the public sector in an open data or data science capacity at Devon County Council, as open data lead, as well as at the Food Standards Agency in the UK. I guess she and I, and probably many of you tonight, share this feeling, this knowledge that data and technology is ultimately about people, and it is about building those bridges that will ensure that whatever technology or data product or service we build will remain or stay or be relevant in the first place for the communities that matter. So I'm very much looking forward to Lucy's talk, which has the interesting title, Data Doesn't Drive, People Do.
Right, let me just find my controls again, because everything disappeared when I shared my screen, which is very disturbing.
All right, no problem.
You can all hear me, I hope, okay, and
yes.
see the slide? Yep, fantastic. Yep. Right. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Oh, my video's over there, that's why I can't see it. Bear with me 1 second. It's very confusing to have to look between screens. There we go. Yes. So thank you for the introduction. Yes, that is me. I am a local government person of long standing, was working at my local council for about 20 years, brief stint at the in the civil service in the UK, and then freelance. So a real mixed bag, but everything I've done has been about data, very much about data. And when I was asked if I would contribute a talk to this webinar series, looked over the topics, and one of them being, can we talk about open data communities, successful open data communities specifically, and what the lessons might be from those that could be related to building better open data portals. Not that they're not already excellent, but what lessons could we possibly share and learn? So I'll get on to why the title of the talk in a moment. First, I'm just going to firmly establish my credentials as somebody who gets out a lot and talks to people all the time about data by explaining some of the things that I've done. So my role at the council was variously as database admin, as report writer and creator, as the office nerd, basically, who knew how to get things out of that database and into a usable format for other people to look at. And the more the tools developed, the more my skills developed, and the more I found myself being much more of a generalist, paradoxically, helping people just to get that information out of their data, and so therefore knowing where the data was and who was holding it. So what I call the really useful people, in quotes, the really useful people in an organization who will know where the bodies are buried in data terms. Where's the really good data, and how good is it? And if it isn't good, do they know how bad it is, and can they give you the appropriate caveats and tools for working with it? So that was really useful. So we ended up making some very, very good tools and an open data infrastructure and attitude that I'm still very proud of, even though I haven't worked there for a couple of years or more now. So this was on the screen right now as an example of something that we put together to just make it a little easier to share very relevant data about commissioning information in social care, so that providers would have an idea of what we were thinking, what we knew about the state of the market, and could make their own strategic and business plans accordingly, but also made it easier if people were searching this or were looking for information for care for their family members, say. Around that also, so the civil service was a slightly different thing. Rather than being an internal network with an outward-facing role in kind of bringing people in to be our friends and to help us improve our data, this was more internal. Food Standards Agency is already an excellent government department in terms of reaching out, putting out open data. and my former colleagues there are very active in a sort of national and international open data scene in sharing ideas and in building really useful things. One of the things that I found was that internally there was some, I suppose uncertainty is probably the right word, about what a data science function was supposed to do. Because there's very much this view that if you're doing data science, what that really means is you're doing machine learning. So a lot of the data science qualifications at the moment focus very heavily on being a good machine learning person, which is great and is fine and all, but when I'm talking to people who are trying to do data science or hoping to get into data science, I will always focus very much more on the human engagement side, because we're doing these things for people, or to people in some cases, but to help people, to make things better for people. So that engagement is crucial. So one of the things that I did when I was leading this team, the example on screen is absolutely spot on and perfect, is to encourage my team to blog and to set up a program of internal peer-to-peer learning. So sort of lunch and learn sessions and podcasts and that sort of thing that were available to our colleagues internally. And this article and blog that my colleague and team member Anne Burns wrote resulted in a lot of colleagues reaching out and saying, I didn't know we had that data, or I didn't know we had that data like that. And can I have it, please? Can I have a different slice of it? And oh, actually, I need it for this thing over here. So it built up almost an internal market, internal demand for that data and for the things that we could help them do with it. So that was, again, an example of community building in a more sort of enclosed internal way for colleagues. Outside of my day job, I got involved and am still involved in many other things. So the database being a perfect example. Originally, we were an Open Data Institute node. The node model now doesn't run so much, although some of the nodes are still kind of around and active. And my colleague and I decided that we would then start up the database, which is doing similar but not the same. One of the things that I do around that is just to find things to do with data. I like to play with data. I like data in a gaming environment, in a virtual environment, to show people what can be done, which has led to the development of some training resources. And some classroom sessions that we did for a local primary school using Minecraft as a virtual world to run around in and make suggestions for improvements. So just finding different ways to reach different people and using the tools and meeting people where they are is fairly crucial for that. Minecraft is a way into the hearts of the, let's say, 8 to 11-year-olds in your life, in case you were looking for something. Although these days it's probably Fortnite, but Minecraft will still work, I promise you. And then finally, so with ODI Devon and also with the data place, we've been running events and we call them Things Camp. With the explosion in Internet of Things ideas and technology and devices that you can take home and play with yourself, they're very affordable, like the Arduino in the picture there. Lots of starter kits, lots of tutorials online. Nevertheless, it's overwhelming for a lot of people. And specifically, we found for parents who themselves may not have done technology at school, or may have done it at school and hated it so much they've never touched it since. And suddenly their 9 and 10-year-olds are coming home saying, Mummy, Daddy, there's a code club, or I got given a microbit, or my teacher gave me this book about Scratch or Python. And they're learning these things in school, and the parents are like, I have no idea what any of this is. Not only do I not know where to start, I didn't even know I needed to, and now I just don't know where to start. So we just started running these events where we'd show up and we would say, everybody is welcome, no minimum level of skills or knowledge required, show up and we will have a range of these things and we will let you handle them. Basically, we'll put them out on the table, pick it up, look at it, turn it over, look at the back. It doesn't matter, it's sacrificial. We don't mind what happens to this thing because we want you to have the confidence to handle it. We will show you how you might get started. So, I mean, £30, £40 might not sound like a lot of money if you really know you want to get into this. But if you don't, if you're not sure, if you're doing it because you want to help your child get ahead or because you're intrigued, it can be quite a lot of money to spend on the off chance that it might not work. And also that, if you fumble it getting out the box and drop it on the floor, that's a lot of money wasted. So we put ours out on the table and say, it's fine. Some of these don't even work. They're there for you to look at. It doesn't matter if you drop it on the floor. It doesn't matter if you lick it. We don't care. It's just for you to have a little bit of confidence handling these things. So around that, and very much in our local area, but also traveling further afield and meeting up with similar networks and friends in some of the other cities, and Birmingham being one example, and Bristol, we've run these events and they've been very successful because we're giving that, opening up the door a little bit to let people in and say, sneak in the back door and we'll show you some stuff, and you don't have to worry about not belonging or it not being at your level, because we don't really go for that pitching stuff at people's level thing. It's like, tell us what you need and we'll try and help you. So those things have been the basis of my community building experience, if you like. Those are the things that I do. Right. Why am I talking about data not being able to drive? Well, because I am heartily sick of this phrase, data-driven. Hear it a lot. And also the slide background is no coincidence. We call this one, my friends and I, the "ooh, data" slide, because it's the one that you see when someone says, now we're going to talk about data. This is the slide. This or something very much like it in safe shades of corporate trustworthy blue, and with lots and lots of ones and zeros. Make absolutely no mistake, we're talking about data. But we talk about data-driven a lot. We talk about data-driven insights, data-driven business, data-driven innovation. Data can't drive. Data can't drive. It doesn't drive. People drive. This is what people do. Yeah, we're talking about solving problems with data. Even if we're talking about machine learning and really, really technical infrastructure and toolkits, people are doing the work. People choose the data. They choose what to measure, what to select, what to reject. They choose what gets calculated. They define the problem before the data is even thought of. They define the entire problem space and decide what it is that they're trying to solve. They set all the assumptions around that, all the caveats. People do this work. Yeah, so data-driven, it's not a thing. Excuse me. So this is a slide I use when I'm explaining to people what data science really is, or not, as the case may be. There can be a belief that, given sufficiently technical people and enough of them, that there is some kind of magical black box into which you feed all of your data, no matter how awful, and out of which comes magic, rainbows, and all of the answers and all of the insights. And most people don't need to know what's inside the box. It could well be unicorns all the way down. They don't need to know, because that's the technical stuff. Well, for me, what's in that box? It's people. It's people making decisions about how that box is going to work and what is going to need to go in and what is likely to come out and how to present that and make it usable and useful and accessible to people. So it's not magic, it's not unicorns, it's people. Yeah, smart people, clever people, good people, working really, really hard, but it's people. So that's my people rant. I hope you enjoyed it. There's more. The brief that I took for this, there was some background to the series of webinars, and one of the phrases that I took out of it was, with data portals, the focus was on accelerating publication, on providing capabilities and incentives to just basically to reassure and support people to publish more of their data. So as an analyst, you've been in the business any time at all and been working with data any time at all, and you eventually find that you have kind of exhausted the possibilities of the data you have immediately to hand, like on your own device or in your own data store. You start looking for other stuff. And these are the three problems that you encounter, which I call the domains of fail, basically. First one, if I have a pointer, I don't know if I do. Yes, I do. There we are. So first one, oops, I know that data should exist, but I can't find it. That's the first domain of fail. I don't even know if it exists. It should. It would be really useful if it did. I have no way of finding out. Okay, so that's the first one. It's frustrating. Okay. Even more frustrating is knowing that it does exist, or used to exist, but no longer does. You go looking for it and you get a big fat 404. That's annoying. Yeah. Finally, these two are irritating and frustrating. There's nothing compared to knowing it exists, knowing how to find it, finding it, and discovering that it is unusable for some reason. It might be format, it might be licensing, it might be locked behind a paywall, it could be all sorts of things. But basically, either I can't find it, I know where it should be, but it's not there anymore, or there it is, but I can't use it. Those are the domains of fail. And this is the sort of thing that I think data portals were kind of set up to help with, to make sure that it would be possible to find that data when you needed it. And hopefully it would be in good order and you'd be absolutely clear about whether or not you could use it. But yeah, the analyst's life can be a hard one. First world problems, I know, but it is nevertheless very, very irritating. So, the leading question is, what can portals learn from successful data communities? So I'm going to just go through some of the lessons we learned with building our networks at the data place, and before that with ODI Devon, and how we kind of learned to bring the right people in, the right people being a movable feast, you can't really define that, but how we eventually learn to have that group around us and to lean on their support and to offer ours back in return. So the lessons. Quick puff, but we did a conference back in 2015, which was brilliant, small, but brilliant. So it was international and national and local and hyper local networks all brought together into one room. It was amazingly good. Haven't had the time or the funding to do it since, but maybe one day. Here are the lessons learned. Start light and build up. I'll go into each of these in more detail, I promise you. Be open to feedback and design for diversity. Okay, those are the three lessons at base. I like groups of threes because they're nice and quick to talk through. Start with the first one. Start light and build it up. Best quote ever on this topic is this one. Go ugly early, which was a quote from a talk by Emma Coleman, who is the lady who's responsible for making sure that the London data store happened. And obviously one of the big things that came out of that was the Transport for London started putting out a lot more transport data, and there's a whole economy now built on making travel apps that make it possible for people to get around. And the whole data ecosystem around that again, which is seeing improved metrics going back up to transport providers and transport data providers. And it's a constantly reinforced cycle of improvement. Better services, better transport networks, better data, better metrics, better idea of what's going on. But this is where Emma started. She wanted to get it done. She wanted something to happen. She needed to very quickly prove that it was worthwhile because people were questioning whether or not it was the right thing to do and the right thing to spend money on. And she needed to very quickly just get something up there just to show that, yes, it was going to work, and yes, there was going to be a demand, and yes, there was going to be a community of people around this. So that's what she did. I think, if I remember correctly, when she gave the talk, she did show an image of just how ugly it was at the beginning. And yes, it was ugly, but it was functional. And it started that conversation about, is this right? Is this enough? What else should there be? How else should it be done? So all of those questions. So very much in that vein, this is an artist impression, i.e. I doodled it myself, of something that I actually did show to my chief executive at the time and the head of the HR department to say, I think I can build you a dashboard that will show these figures that we're constantly being asked for. I think I can do this. This is kind of what it's going to look like. It's not the most beautiful drawing I ever did, but it was intensely practical. It showed enough to say, yeah, we want something like that, but also could you just add another box that does XYZ, something else that they wanted? Yes, absolutely. But it's these kind of back of the envelope sketches and discussions that get you, I suppose, in the right frame of mind for having a really productive session talking about what it needs to look like, what it needs to do, what it needs to include, but also brings out the technical requirements. So this one being an example, another dreadful digital scrappy doodle. We were in a meeting, people were asking me what was possible, and as they asked stuff, I was sketching and saying, right, if we're talking geospatial data, we're going to need a layer for this, we're going to need a layer for that, and I think we have point data for the other thing. And eventually we arrived at this thing in the middle here, which is basically my idea of what it might look like if we overlaid certain geospatial data together with what we knew about where more vulnerable communities were in terms of access to social care services, in-house domiciliary care, and things like hospital car schemes. So these blobs being where you get the sort of voluntary hospital car schemes that will take you to your appointment and bring you home again. And then where we might be able to then work out, like this area here, somewhere that's not really covered by any of the existing services. And that might be where the voluntary groups that were in this meeting might want to focus getting funding for and offering a service. but this very scrappy, very ugly diagram was the basis for a couple of really good collaborations. And again, that community widened out as a result of that meeting to include 3 or 4 voluntary groups who before that hadn't had much of a voice with the council. They tend to be umbrella bodies that, I wouldn't say they get in the way, they do a great job, but sometimes they can be a little bit of a blocker for other organisations to bring ideas to the table. This organisation in particular was the antithesis of that, the absolute opposite. They were very, very keen to bring more people into these meetings. Discussions like this are the result. So another thing I'm very proud of, it's pretty ugly. We're using WordPress. Devon County Council's at the time offer for the website was basically a slightly bespoke, slightly tweaked WordPress, but it was good. And one of the things that we did for our open data, and specifically our spend data, was to throw it into GitHub, because we were looking at whether or not we needed to have start investing in infrastructure. Did we need a data portal, for example? It was around about the time that lots of vendors were starting to look into the things that potentially councils might want, local authorities might want. And there was some serious spending going on. But we weren't in a position to spend that sort of money. We already had a GitHub account. We already had a couple of repositories with different things in. And I said, well, can we just put the data into GitHub? Because the sorts of people who are going to want it are going to know what GitHub is. They're going to know how to get data out of it. And more to the point, I know them. I know half of these people, they're friends. We're on Twitter. We're exchanging banter and insults on a regular basis. So actually, I could just say, tell you what, everybody, if you have any interest at all in this data, tell me how you'd like it. We're going to put it into GitHub. How can I make it easier for you to get hold of it? And I got a load of feedback, got a load of suggestions from how to label the files, to make it more consumable on consistently and regularly if they wanted to pull it in month by month into an application, through to somebody suggesting an automated script that would actually take it out of our system and push it to GitHub without somebody having to manually press the button and write the report every month. So made some friends with that one, internally as well as externally, because we saved people time, we saved colleagues time. We also made it a lot more consumable for our external kind of network, our community of data consumers and users. So I remain very, very pleased with that, because it was incredibly ugly, incredibly cheap, but very, very effective. Right. So that's the start light and build up. You can make it better. You can always make it better. But you don't want to invest huge amounts of time and money into making something shiny, only to find it doesn't meet people's needs. So that applies to communities, applies to portals. Being open to feedback. Right, this one contains a world of assumptions and detail, which I probably don't have enough time to go into. By the way, I haven't timed this talk. I do have a tendency to wing it. So Elena, if you would like to make alarmed faces at me, if it starts to look like I'm going to go over time, please do feel free.
Right. You still have lots of time.
Oh, okay. All right. I might have to speak more slowly then. Let's see how we go. Or maybe people will have lots of questions. I don't know. We'll see how we go. Right. Being open to feedback. By which I mean, not only being willing to hear it, but being able to put yourself in a position where people can reach you. So it's one thing to say, oh, all feedback welcome, but if people don't know who to email or who to talk to, if you're not visible, it's going to be very, very hard for people to get that feedback to you. People shouldn't have to work that hard to give you their opinion if you've already said that you want it. So there's something about being visible, there's something about being approachable, and there's something about being where people are. So one of the slides I frequently include in talks like this, but haven't this time, is simply an exit sign, like an emergency exit sign, with the caption, get out of the building, go to where people are. And obviously in lockdown, that's not an option, but we still have those online communities. Go to where people are, meet them where they are, and ask them what it is that they're looking for. So one particular example, when my colleague and I then were still both working for the council, and we were trying to drum up more interest and build a community around the requirements for open data that we were going to offer. We went to a local developers conference in Plymouth at the university, and we managed to secure a very short speaking slot to talk about what it was we wanted to do. And we stood up at the front of the room and we said, in effect, hello, we're from the council and we're here to help. We have all of this open data. We'd like it to be open data, but we don't know what to release first. So could you tell us, please, what you'd like? What do you want? What should we do first? And as one, to a man and woman, they said, well, we don't know. What have you got? I know, we asked you first. That's not fair. You can't just turn it round on us like that. That's mean. But it was a valid question. How are they supposed to know what we have? You know, we work in that environment every day. Of course, we know what we've got. We kind of just assumed that they would have some clue of all of the council functions and all of the data that involved, and would be able to instantly name like 3 or 4 data sets that they were desperate to get their hands on. No, it wasn't like that at all. They were friendly, they were welcoming, they were willing to meet us sort of halfway, but we had to take that step and actually share some sort of a catalogue or a list of the data that we had before they could really have an opinion. So that, foolishly as it may sound, it's almost a trivial, we should have thought of that, but we hadn't. We hadn't considered it. So that was a bit of a wake up. It was a bit of a knockback for us, because we then had to go, oh, we're going to have to go away and find that list. Because actually, I don't think we have it. I don't think we have that complete list. And that continues to be a massive piece of work for a lot of organizations. It's actually pinning down what data you have. Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds. Definitely not as easy as it sounds. But it really helped that we were able to get out of the building, go talk to that group and make them part of our network as well. And put that offer out there. And also to say, once we get this sorted, we will try and get it out to you as soon as possible. But in the meantime, this is who we are. These are our email addresses. This is how you reach us. Add me on LinkedIn, add me on Twitter. Find me if you want to ask any more about this. And do you mind if I, reach out to you if I want to ask you more? So that being reachable, rather than hiding behind office opening hours or whatever. Basically saying, no, we're talking outreach now, we're doing outreach now. And if you want to talk to me, I will absolutely be available, and you can absolutely use these contact details to come and ask me questions. So being open. And the really important thing about this is that trust really matters. Really, really matters. Now, you might think that's obvious. We're talking about people. But this extends to the technical, the resources and the organizations that you want to work with or that you want to use in your work. So I'm going to bring up data mints, which is a thing. It's an asset, a resource that we've built for ourselves at the data place that we use. And we sometimes do, although some of our work is in providing open data infrastructure and portals, some of the other stuff we do is consultancy, sort of helping people get to grips with their data. And what we found quite a long time ago was that there was always this kind of minimum viable data model, if you like. It's called data mints. Bear with me, this is a very silly story, but this is why we call it data mints. My brother went off to university many years ago, and he was quite handy as a cook, but this is back in the 80s when there wasn't the amount of choice that you have these days. So he was basically trying to stay alive on a very, very limited budget, and he would go around the supermarket just before closing and pick up whatever was cheap. And he came home one half term and said that right the way through that half term, he found himself chopping up an onion, starting to fry it, emptying in a pack of like value beef mince, stirring it around for a bit, going, oh, that smells good. And then only realizing, like, right then, he had no idea what he was cooking. He hadn't actually decided what he was making for dinner. Yeah, he'd like muscle memory. Onion, check. Bit of oil, check. Beef, check. At that point, it could be anything. It could be spaghetti bolognese. It could be chili con carne. It could be shepherd's pie or cottage pie. He still had no idea. But that sort of mince and onion was his starting point. Like, it doesn't really matter what I'm having for dinner. I know I need these things, and then I'll make up my mind after that, once I've seen if I've got some beans in the cupboard or not. So this is where data mints comes from. This is your starter pack. No matter what the consultancy, thank you, I have a cup of coffee arriving, thank you very much. No matter what the topic, no matter what the client, no matter what the problem, these are the data sets I'm going to reach for almost before I finished taking that phone call and saying my goodbyes, because I know I'm going to need these things. And the reason is because the sort of things that we work on at the data place tend to be around the state of things. Things happen to people, so population, business, employment, earnings, deprivation, and everything happens somewhere. So geography, administrative boundaries. Yeah, so this is my starter pack. This is my data mints. Now, when I go and get that data, it very much tends to be from the same quite limited set of sources. So most of these will be sort of the Office of National Statistics. Some of this will be government. So at the moment, it's under the charge of a particular government department in the UK for housing and local government. The indices of multiple deprivation, very useful. Geography is going to be OpenStreetMap or Ordnance Survey, administrative boundaries, same. So these are my sources. If I want local and hyperlocal stuff, there's a different set of sources I'll go to. So some examples. ONS have this fabulous site NomisWeb, where you can go and query the data, use different sort of API calls basically to get exactly the slice of data that you want in the format that you want it. That's a firm favorite. Local stuff, it will be things like this. So Plymouth City Council have been one of the Dataplace's clients for a very long time, very supportive of helping us build the business. And this is the portal that we put together for them. It's CCAN effectively with a few improvements. But we talked to them very extensively about what their needs were. And one of the things that they needed was for this to very much reflect their attitude to open data and to be open to other organizations to use. So for the benefit of Plymouth, the city, and for its citizens, if non-profits and partners needed to put data up, then we should make space for them to do that and make basically an access system that allowed them to do that and to support them with data quality and with upload and so on and so forth. So if I wanted data about Plymouth, that is where I would be going. If I wanted data about Devon, I'd be going back to Devon County Council's site and so on and so forth. And your local sources that you trust and that you know. And then we have domain-specific, domain expertise, where you will be looking for something around a particular topic and you will go to that expert. So if I wanted information about health in the UK, it would be the Public Health Dashboard would be my first stop. Yeah, and I might want to go back to other sites to double check stuff or to find some extra flavor, but this is be the first place I would go to. So that's my basic starter set, but why? Okay, there are reasons. Who are these people? They're the data creators. They're the people who make that data, who generate that data in the course of doing whatever their other job might be. Or maybe the job is to create that data, but they are the originators. So straight to the source. Like I said, they might be national or international even, they might be local, and they might be just domain or topic specific experts, but they're the people I'm going to go to. And then there are going to be other groups, so aggregators and curators, so people like, if I want business information, I'm probably going to go to open corporates. If I want geospatial data, I'd say OpenStreetMaps is a good one. So there are specific people I go to. So that's the who, but why? These reasons. Exactly these reasons. What makes these people better than everybody else? Not just because they're the originators. It's not always the case. Why? Because they're reachable. They have named contacts, yeah, or roles. This data set belongs to this department. Use this email address to reach somebody in this department or the head of this team. They have very clear, explicit, and reliable feedback mechanisms. You have a problem with this data set? Leave us a comment, send us an email, give us a ring. Plus, these people are showing up in all the meetups for community again. These people are showing up in the meetups and the unconferences, the open data camps, the data science in government, Slack community, that sort of thing. I know who these people are. I can reach out and touch them if I need to, in a virtual sense, obviously, but I can find them. They're not afraid to be seen. They're not afraid to engage in conversation and debate about the state of their data. In some cases, it's because they are the specialist, so that makes them trustworthy. But track record is important. You can say that you are all these things, you have all these things. You can say that you are all of these things, but you have to demonstrate by your actions that this is the case. You have to respond appropriately and consistently and authentically when people do reach out and want to talk to you. You notice what's not on the list. It's shiny. I don't care if it's shiny. It's nice if it's shiny. It's nice if it's beautiful and it has lots of extra features and a data visualization front end. It's nice, but it's not on my list. I don't need it. Nice to have, but I do not need it. I would rather have, as a data user, something basic that works well with all of these things going on. than something that is pretty but effectively broken. Right. So that's what I mean by the whole be open thing. So this is probably going to be by far the longer section, design for diversity. I came up with about 5 different ways of expressing this. This is the one I settled on. How do we design for diversity? Well, first off, you've got to have that assumption that not everybody is going to be the same. Obvious, right? Obvious, I know. What problem is a data portal trying to solve? Originally, it was to make it easier for publishers, but the perception now is that effectively, if you have a portal, it's because you want everybody to come to your portal. And perception has been certainly amongst sort of, let's say, later adopters of open data, people who are coming to it, it's like, well, I don't want to have to go to a portal. I actually don't. Why do I have to go to that one portal? They want me to go there and get everything from there. And certainly adoption within the public sector and local authorities, it has felt a little bit like that. We'll have a portal and we'll put everything there and people will just have to come there. And it's not just data portals, but it's also sort of citizen portals, one view of the customer. I see some nods. I see you're all familiar with this pain. So this idea that the user story or the user need is, I want to find everything in one place, is skewed and I think not accurate. The mouse has disappeared. There it is. So the community, as viewed by people who are putting together something with a fairly singular focus, tends to be this one entity with one set of feelings and views and wishes and wants. The community wants this. The community wants a portal. The community wants to be able to log in and report potholes in this way. Whatever the case may be, the community. The community is made up of people, and different people want different things. And sometimes the same person wants different things on a different day. Yeah, people's needs shift and change depending on what it is they need to get done. The idea that you can make one thing and it will work for everybody is fundamentally flawed. You know, it might be, I say one portal, but equally it could be one meetup group that everyone is going to be happy to get to. And this is something that we got stuck on with ODI Devon, is that we started having meetups and we gradually found that fewer and fewer people could make it because of the location and the time of day, that it was problematic. And while people did their best to get to the first couple, if there was no huge value to them being there, they were far more likely to go, I don't think I can make it this month. And attendance began to tail off because it was a difficult scenario for everybody. It didn't work for everyone. And the same goes for Slack groups. I've got about 10. I'm a member of about 10, and each one performs a different function. That's not counting the one I used to communicate with my colleagues at the data place, or the one I used to communicate with my colleagues at the ODI that I'm currently doing a contract with. Yeah, that's just the ones that are like interest-based. There are 10, I think. A friend of mine who's a developer in Exeter shared his Slack screen with me one day, and I think he's got about 25. So we're not alone. I did tell him it's not a competition, but I did have to acknowledge that if it were, he would be winning. But yeah, you can't just have one thing that does that all. And the same with career pathways. There's not one right way to become a data scientist or to be a data scientist, which is a whole other topic I talk about. And there may not be one professional body. So one thing that is always going to meet everybody's needs is not really going to work. And I very nearly illustrated this slide with the all-seeing eye of Sauron, just so I could bring in the whole one ring to rule them all quote, but I figured it was eventually unnecessary. One thing does not always meet everybody's needs. It's just not how it rolls. So I mentioned user stories and user needs. If you have, and I haven't done a lot of software development per se, but friends of mine have suggested that using this user needs sort of basic index card method to say, if you can articulate the need clearly, then you have a much better chance of actually building a thing that people will use. So you fill it in something like this as some role or other. I need the thing that is proposing to be built in order to, or so I can do a job or have an easier time doing that job. And that's great, except that how I've seen this get used is in here, people start with this. So what the thing that I've got, I'm going to put that in that I need, and then I'm going to figure out who needs it and why, rather than starting here, which is the end goal. Yeah, so with the big data portals, end goal, so I can just publish my data. Yeah, that was the end goal. That could have been lots of different things. For Devon County Council, it was GitHub and a couple of smart nerds working in the policy team. Yeah, it could have been a CCAN instance. It could have been a full-on bells and whistles, all singing, all dancing data portal from one of the bigger vendors. It could have been lots of different things, but this was the thing that we wanted to get done. We just wanted to publish. And of course, different people are going to want different things. These are examples just around data in a more general sense rather than portals or publishing, but different people have different needs. Yeah, this person could be this person because they have a different thing to do. Yeah, they have a different need. It could be the same people at different times in different roles from one year to the next, or day job and passion project. Different people need different things at different times to get different things done. And the issue is, and no data presentation is complete without an XKCD cartoon, so I'll make no apologies for this one. If you try to build one thing that will work for everybody, the ingenuity that people will display to circumvent your intentions and make it do the thing they needed it to do will astonish you. And it will look something like this. People will figure out how to get around what you'd imagine would be its use case and just do whatever it is that they need to do. Sometimes they display considerably more skill and ingenuity in doing that than they would have needed to just get the data in the first place. So a warning, I suppose, a caveat. And then the next thing is, on the diversity front and on understanding, is not everybody is going to be an expert. Yeah, there are some intelligent, well-educated people out there, some scarily smart people out there who are nevertheless not data people yet. They want to be, dipping their toes in and would like to get involved and would like to do stuff with data and with open data, but they haven't necessarily come from the same place. Haven't necessarily come from the same background. They don't necessarily have all the same skills. They might not know all the same history, but they're here and they would like to make use of the data and they would like to be involved in the communities and they would like to make contributions and they have contributions to make no doubt about it. So not everyone is an expert. A little example of some work I was doing with the ODI with supporting some people around a challenge, an open data challenge. And some of them have not handled open data specifically before. So I was asked to do a really brief webinar just to introduce the concepts and how people might work with open data. So this is where I had to do some serious thinking, finding open data. Yeah, how do you find open data? If you haven't worked with it before, and this is not the world you've been kind of working in, how do you find it? And this is what I gave them. Allow me 1 second, I'm going to just take a swig of my coffee. Now, I went in a little bit more detail with them on each of these, but basically showed them how to use a Google search effectively. Firstly, who might be working in the, if I'm looking at a particular type of problem, who might be having an interest in that? Who might have data? Who might generate data? Yeah, if you're looking for education information, you want to be looking maybe at the governments in the countries and the jurisdictions that you're working in and so on. Starts with who, always. And then the what. Do a keyword search. Yeah, what sort of data might exist around this? If I search for schools data or potholes data or health data, what's going to come up? That's going to lead me back to the who. The where, portals and the platforms, this last, it's not a coincidence. Yeah, there is a reason for that. Who is going to help me find out who can help me? Not just who's got the data, but who can help me, who's already working in this space, who's got opinions. The what is going to back up that who. The where is something that I might consider, but, and this is a thought that I had, and I'd be happy for people to have opinions on this, and maybe we can tackle this in the questions, whilst I was putting the slide together, was that collaborations are about people, about communities already. So if a group of people have come together around a specific problem, that's where you get that collaboration. And then the portals and the platforms also would tend to be built around the needs of a specific community. So something like Kaggle, yeah, as an example. It's there to serve a particular function for a group of people who found they had a specific need at a specific time. So it's brilliant It's not going to work for everybody at every time. If you already know that the thing that you're working on is likely to be backed up by some existing collaboration, that's great. If you're new to this, you're coming into this without somebody, holding your hand and coaching you along the way and showing you stuff, you want to start with the who. Who do I know? Who's got stuff? Who's got resources? Who's got expertise? Who do I know who knows somebody else? Yeah, that network is important. So, how am I doing for time, Elena?
So we have 12 more minutes left. So maybe, if possible, try to wrap this up. So
Yep, this is the wrap-up slide, though. Okay.
I thought it sounded a little bit like that, so I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I figured if you've told me I still had like half an hour left, I could go off on a tangent. But if we're looking at nearly done there, right? Brilliant. So
Yeah.
the starting question: what can portals learn from the successful data communities? So these are my takeaways. Okay, another group of 3. Firstly, well, this is technically it's 4, but you're going to let me get away with that, I'm sure. It's about people, always. It's about people. The first takeaway is go ugly early. Build the thing that shows your intent, and then ask people what they think. The second takeaway is be trusted, which is not only tell people how trustworthy you are, but demonstrate and be open to trusting other people at the same time. So, yeah, to be out there and make yourself reachable, available, talkable too, so that people can have those conversations. And lastly, you check your assumptions. Always, 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 always. I would have put in start with user need, but that phrase is forever tainted for people who've worked with public sector because it implies a level of digital, I think, familiarity and skill and a very specific kind of professional niche. But at base, this is what they mean when they say that. Check your assumptions. Actually talk to your users and find out what they need. And don't assume everybody is just like you, or has your background, has your skills, or has your needs and requirements in mind. And there we are. That is the end. Right, over to you all.
Thank you. Fabulous. Thank you so much. And I'm going to start with a question, an earlier question from Gianfranco. Say a question for later. What's the difference between go ugly early and move fast and break things? Which is,
Oh, nice.
as we know, a Silicon Valley thing.
Okay, move fast and break things is not a phrase I would be comfortable with, I think. Fail fast and fix it would be my go-to.
Okay, all right.
So moving fast and breaking stuff refers to smashing other people's business models and in an attempt to dominate with your own. And it always feels to me like a very entitled toddler kind of behavior in what is supposed to be a community space, whereas the fail fast is build something no matter how rubbish, because the quicker somebody tells you that's not what you want, what they wanted, the quicker you can move on and make improvements and iterate.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that. If I could just follow up on something we've been discussing in the European Data Portal for years, and that's that question about feedback and how to manage that balance between a publisher driven approach where the publisher, after consultations, publishes the data set and others use it, versus a more open approach where everyone perhaps can publish and comment on data sets and contribute to them, to the effect then that the publisher perhaps or the organization has less control over what gets published. And I know there are different views on that, on how to manage that tension. I was wondering if you have any examples or experiences or thoughts about it.
I can't think of right now of any direct experiences that would be relevant, but certainly principles that I work to would be, if I have a particular data set and I'm the only person who has it, and I choose to make it open, then that's a nice straightforward scenario. If we're looking at lots of different people having data around a similar topic and wanting equal access to publish it and to get it out there, there really isn't a way to stop them.
Yeah.
So that sounds a little simplistic. It sounds like, I think your question is possibly more nuanced than that, but feel free to force me to clarify.
So I'll follow up. I'm just gonna move on to Caroline to give more people a chance to ask, and if there is time,
Sure.
I'll ask a little bit more about that. So Carolyn is asking, any advice when the need comes from very rural farmers who certainly know what they need, but perhaps can't express it. So it is hard to match data language and their ways of knowing in something that perhaps someone who works in data publishing or public services is able to identify or relate to. So I guess it's a question about digital divide ultimately, and how to have those conversations.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Thank you for that one. So yeah, we had some stuff, I guess, broadly related. Devon, the county in the UK where I live, is very rural. It's very large. It's very dispersed, and there are areas where digital access is poor, if not non-existent. And we did have discussions quite a long time ago with a friendly reference group of people who were mostly older, some senior citizens and retirees, but were living in rural areas. And we went all there very excited, trying to get them to tell us what data they wanted, what information they wanted. And we came away very firmly chastised for basically making such massive assumptions about what people would want. We went with our solution in mind, basically. And what they told us was what they wanted was the parish newsletter. Yeah, which is that thing that somebody very carefully curates, prints out, and hand delivers on a piece of paper that they then take and turn to the back page once they've finished reading all the parish news, turn to the back page and pin it up next to the phone in case they need to call the person responsible for taking the bins or the person responsible for trimming the hedges. You know, that was what they wanted. And I suspect that for agricultural communities with a sort of poor digital access, the answer, the requirement is going to be something quite similar. My recommendation would be, as soon as is humanly possible, is to get a human being out there to sit down and do that back of an envelope sketch and say, right, if we could give you what you needed, what would it look like? Yeah, and then work back from there. What needs to go into that? And if it needs to be a parish newsletter, then so be it. Yeah, it's not always going to be a data delivery. That's not always going to work for people. Go and say, I'm going to sketch stuff and I'm going to show it to you. Is this what you're thinking? If not, why not? What would be helpful?
Yeah. Thank you. Michalis is asking, in an open government dogma where you publish them all and let the users sort them out, how do you avoid creating noise on your website through a shiny layer?
Yeah, shiny layers for the win. Yeah, good question. I'm just going to, with my slides, I'm going to scroll back to, there was the one of Devon County Council site. So back a bit, back a bit, back a bit. There we go, that one. So yeah, this is what did I WordPress. Sorry, I lost the word for a moment. That's a bit scary. I blame my age. So this is WordPress, and this list of data sets is being automatically pre-populated by one of my very smart colleagues who wrote the script. It does the push to publish, as well as the collecting that list of data sets. So yeah, it doesn't have to be very shiny. Witness what I'm showing you right now. That's pretty sparse. It's very Devon indeed, the branding. Although, yeah, no, this is current. I went and got it last week. So yes, there's going to be noise. If you're publishing a lot of data sets, there's going to be noise. There's going to be constant updates if people are following a particular repo or are scanning every day to see what's new. But there are ways to manage that. And we do that a little bit with, where did I get to? I remember, the Plymouth site I wanted to show you. There we go. That's probably shortly after this one. There we are. So with the reason that we decided, my colleague and I, to begin investigating CCAN, and then the wider group, the four of us who are working together now have continued with it, is because it does allow that whole see what's new. So rather than like, here's everything all at once, just throw it at somebody, you can set it up so that this, for example, this site, the Plymouth data place instance, the front page is actually a very beautiful picture of Plymouth seen to its best advantage on a sunny day coming in from the sea. And then there are sort of 3 sections underneath which say, go here if you want this, go here if you want that, and here is what's new, like what came up in the last week. So there are ways to manage that, but then you, rather than portal strictly portal, you're getting into your website, the user experience for your website, and the sort of how you set up navigation. So you're into UX territory effectively.
Absolutely. And Michalis, we've also done a little bit of work on that in EDP2, sort of analyzing how you could do some user experience analysis based, for instance, on the session logs that users have. So Tess also comments on oh no, hold on. There's a lot going on in the chat. So, Tess, do you have any suggestions for ways to support publishers with lower digital skills improve their data quality?
Oh, yes. I only have 1 minute, so I don't have time.
Go for it.
But
This
yes.
is the
Oh, absolutely. Well, so to start with, to be suggesting that they did the absolute most basic thing that fits with the level of skills that they have. If they want more skills, is to support them with training to do some specific things, but to steer them towards things like GitHub, which are easy, or to simply having a list of links. A Google Doc will do. Google Sheet, you know, keep it simple. If that's what they're comfortable using, let them use it. All right, and don't judge, because we all have to start somewhere. You support people with, you meet them where they are in the geographical sense, and in the network and community sense, you also meet them where they are on the skills front. You help them. Once they decide they've outgrown Google Sheets, fantastic. Let's show you the next thing. Is that helpful?
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
I mean, yes, says Tess, in capital letters. Thank you, Lucy. This has been absolutely fabulous. And I would like to thank everyone for the discussions in the chat. This has been the last webinar in this series. And what a great way to wrap it up. However, we are going to be back in the second half of this year with what I would call the second season of the future of the open data portals. So thanks everyone for joining, and let's keep in touch on Twitter and elsewhere. All recordings are available on the European Data Portal channel, and hope to see you soon virtually for the next series of the webinar. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.